Hey there, hi there, ho there. Today we're going to talk about what are you going to look for in a smaller ADV bike if you want to use a smaller ADV bike for, let's talk about it. So I've gotten the question, what do you look for in a smaller ADV bike? And that brings a lot of questions to mind more than answers. So I think I'm going to just start with asking questions to make you think of the right answers, because you know the answers, you just need the right questions. So first off, purpose. What are you going to be riding the bike for? If you're riding more off-road, you're going to want a smaller bike. It's going to be more maneuverable. It's going to be easier to pick up when you tip over. So you're going to want a smaller bike if you're doing a lot of off-road. If you're a big guy, then it probably doesn't matter. But if you're, not really wanting to pick up a big bike, think about that. How much bike do you want to pick up when it tips over if you're doing a lot of off-road? If you're going to be touring on an ADV bike, which most people do nowadays, they do more touring than off-road. That's been the trend lately. Then you might want to think of a larger cc bike, because on the highway you get more vibration the higher the revs that you're riding in. And the larger the displacement bike, the lower the gear you can ride in, or the lower RPMs that you can carry highway speeds. So that'll equate to less vibration. But on longer trips, larger displacement, you're not going to get the gas mileage. So that's something to consider. How much is gas mileage important to you? Another thing to consider is load. How much luggage are you going to be taking? Are you going to be taking short trips or not carrying that much with you? Are you a minimalist packer or are you an overpacker? If you're an overpacker and you're just going overnight, but you bring 3 pairs of shoes and 5 shirts and want to be prepared for any and every condition and circumstance, then you might want to consider a bigger bike, because it's going to slow you down. All the weight is going to put more stress on the engine, and you're not going to have as much performance out of it if you're overloaded. So consider that. How much weight are you going to be carrying in your luggage? What are you going to be carrying with you? Do you bring the kitchen sink? I remember when I went to the Women's Sport Bike Rally one year, I had the margarita mix and the tequila and the blender. So I was loaded for bear, and I was at the limit of my poor little VFR 800 because I had everything packed for the weekend and all that. Liquid is heavy, the blender was heavy. Let me tell you, it was a challenge doing those mountain roads, doing the tail of the dragon fully loaded like that. That was a challenge. So another ADV bike question. Why do you want an ADV bike? What are you going to be using it for? Think that through. Also, what is your stature? Are you a big guy? Is a small ADV bike going to be able to give you the performance that you want? If you want quick acceleration, test ride a smaller bike and make sure that it's going to be able to accelerate with your weight. Also take into account you're going to have luggage with you. So is it just accelerating okay and just doing okay with just you on the bike? It might not be enough if you're wanting to have luggage with you. Now, as far as features to look for, that goes to your personality. Are you somebody who wants all the information on the dash, or are you a minimalist and you just want your speedo and tack? That's a personality question. That's not a which bike is better question. That's really how do you ride. Also, something to look for is adjustment in the preload. How easy is it to adjust the preload? That is something that I would recommend, making sure that it's easy to adjust the preload. Something I like on the Tiger is you can adjust the preload on the fly using the toggle on the dash. It's electronic suspension adjustment, so that's really handy. If I forget to adjust the preload before I take off after loading up my bike, I can just adjust it. If I decide to go for a ride without all my luggage, oops, I've got the preload set for with luggage, I can just change it on the fly. So that's something to think about. Are you really good at remembering to change your preload before you get on the bike? My memory sucks, so I like the electronic suspension adjustment. Another thing to consider is if you're going to be doing more off-road than on-road, make sure you get the spoked wheels. Don't get cast wheels if you're going to be riding off-road. Why? What's the difference? Cast wheels might crack if you're doing a trail and you hit something. So that would really put a damper on your day. But spoke wheels are made to flex a little bit and take up some of that shock. Also, you can get tires that have a tube if you're going to be doing a lot of off-road and you might need to fix a flat. It's easier to fix a tube, carry a spare tube with you, than it is to get a flat fixed, have to get a new tire. What are some other things about ADV bikes? How big a windscreen? Some ADV bikes have a really tiny, teeny, tiny windscreen. That's something you can change, but that's something you need to take into consideration when you're doing your financial calculations about which bike to buy. Another thing is test ride it. Different smaller bikes have different power ranges, different power bands, and different amount of just power. So see which one suits you. But speaking of suits you, I think that's really the biggest consideration. There is no one best bike for everybody. And you can go back and look at the video series that I did about picking the best touring bike. The same applies for picking the right ADV bike for you. It's going to be a lot of considerations about what kind of riding you do, your preferences. It's going to be about what's comfortable for you. I have a really short torso and really long legs, so a bike that has a certain geometry is going to fit me better than another bike with a different geometry. And how adjustable is the geometry of the bike? Are you going to have to get aftermarket parts to adjust the geometry so that it fits you better? These are all things to take into consideration when picking the right ADV bike. So really, in a nutshell, figure out what's the best bike for you, because it's not going to be the best bike for everybody. Well, if you like what I've had to say, hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the little bell after you subscribe so you know when videos drop. Hope this has all been helpful, helping you figure out what kind of small ADV bike you might want to get. And now that you've got an idea of what bike to get, go buy one and have an adventure.